The topic of the October 15th, 2023 elections, which brought Donald Tusk's government to power, has resurfaced. As revealed by Thomas Sakiewicz, the president of Republika, there is evidence that servers located in Cyprus were used to control the movement of buses transporting voters to various polling stations. As Judge Kubik pointed out in January 2024, as a result of these actions, the coalition was able to gain excessive mandates on December the 13th. In addition, the so-called Democratic side enjoyed the support of both European and American left-wing elites. The question must therefore be asked whether the recent parliamentary elections were entirely free. In October 2023, parliamentary elections were held in Poland, as a result of which Donald Tusk became Prime Minister.
Nigdy w życiu nie byłem tak szczęśliwy z tego niby drugiego miejsca.
Several factors contributed to this result. One of them was the so-called electoral tourism. It comprised obtaining a certificate from the municipal office to vote in a different location in order to cast a vote in the district which the future Tusk coalition considered most important. This is how Roman Giertych, for example, became a member of parliament. Now, Thomas Sakiewicz, president of TV Republika, has returned to the topic. He has obtained evidence proving that all electoral tourism was managed by servers located in Cyprus, which may indicate foreign interference in the elections. This was probably done under the influence of the European Union with EU money. We will continue to develop and investigate this matter, but we also have information about hundreds of millions of dollars spent on organizations that contributed to the overthrow of the Morawiecki government. This topic was present in the media. On January the 11th, 2024, the Supreme Court ruled that the elections were legal. However, Judge Paweł Kubik was the only one to submit a so-called separate opinion on the justification of the resolution. He pointed out that electoral tourism is legal, but that the state must learn from this and curb this system in the future. This was also covered by the allegations in the election protests. As a judge, I actually learned about this from the materials contained in the election protests, which were then confirmed by the prosecutor. In general, this process involved redirecting buses with voters to specific constituencies, where there was still a chance to win an extra seat. This means that the whole process was legal, as it exploited a loophole in the law. However, the fact that the servers were located in Cyprus and the whole logistics were complicated and required a lot of work raises natural questions about the masterminds behind the whole venture. This comprehensive support, this organization that lasted several months, if not longer, makes us wonder whether it could have actually been done by people who today, in government, seem to struggle to even tie their own shoelaces. To prevent this scenario from repeating itself during the last presidential election, the opposition launched a special application that allowed for the thorough verification of certificates, allowing people to vote outside their electoral district. It immediately became a target for the ruling camp. I was viciously attacked by the Prime Minister, who attacked me both in the Sejm and in the Prime Minister's office. He even used the Internal Security Agency to file a complaint with the prosecutor's office about the app. The prosecutor's office has, of course, already dismissed the case as there was no crime involved. Donald Tusk has been the darling of Europe's left-wing establishment for years. Previously, he could count on the support of German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who elevated him to a lucrative position in Brussels. Then, when the Law and Justice Party ruled Poland and Donald Tusk was ending his career in Europe, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen sent him on a mission to Poland.
Now, my dear Donald,
you are returning to your country to defend those values once again.
For those values. Bon courage, my friend.
Good luck, my friend. Remember, Donald, when we meet again, we will see you, as you yourself said, as Prime Minister.
As a Prime Minister.
EU structures unlawfully deprived Poland of funds from the National Recovery Plan and only released them, in part, when Donald Tusk became Prime Minister.
Donald.
What is more, on February the 3rd, the US House Judiciary Committee published a report entitled The Foreign Censorship Threat, which clearly shows that the European Union, through pressure on digital giants, censored the internet, as was the case in Poland in 2023. Mindful of the DSA's requirements that platforms mitigate the so-called hate speech, TikTok systematically censored conservative views on gender issues. Then, in the days before the election, the European Commission requested additional censorship of popular accounts expressing views on migration, the COVID-19 pandemic, and other topics in Slovak domestic politics. Accounts that the European Commission conceded were engaged in political debate ahead of the election. The European Commission's campaign was nothing less than an effort at narrative control, and it would soon be replicated across Europe. TikTok censored similar political speech ahead of the 2023 Polish parliamentary election. And on top of that, left-wing establishment organizations were best sponsored indirectly by the US government through USAID and the various NGOs which got their funding through the program. The money tap was turned off only when Donald Trump won the election.
Tego typu zjawisk mamy bardzo dużo.
We have a lot of these types of phenomena. They should all undoubtedly be investigated. Such an investigation is underway in the United States because American taxpayers' money was used to overthrow one of the most pro-American governments in the world, which was Mateusz Morawiecki's government in Poland. If it's not electoral tourism, it's censorship or money transfers. The great powers of this world had various ways of shaping the political scene on the Vistula. History teaches us that once before in the 18th century, similar practices ended the collapse of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. If nothing changes, nothing will stop events from producing a similar result. The trade agreement between the United States and India is shaking up the global energy market. Delhi has agreed to limit imports of Russian oil in exchange for lower tariffs from Washington and deeper economic cooperation. This move undermines the Kremlin's financial foundations and shifts the balance of power not only in Asia but also in Europe. The first effects of the Indo-American cooperation can be seen today in the waters of the Indian Ocean. For several days now, Russian tankers have been drifting there with oil that Moscow has no one to sell to. India's restriction on the purchase of Russian oil has struck at the heart of Moscow's energy security. For years, Russia has relied on raw material exports for large budget revenues, which it uses to finance its military. Now it seems that one of the pillars of its economy is collapsing. The impact of the India-USA deal is hard to overstate. Russia has a lot to lose if new trade agreements limit its role not only in India, but also in other markets, including those related to the so-called shadow fleet. These ships, which are used to circumvent sanctions and transport Russian oil to India and China, are already under heavy international pressure.
Russia has a lot to lose because, first of all, Russian oil companies have been active in the Venezuelan oil industry. They do have a stake there. And if the United States is going to exert control and push adversaries out, then Russia could potentially lose access or have a diminished role to play in Venezuela's oil industry and its future.
This could significantly weaken the budget needed to finance a war in Ukraine. According to maritime websites, Russian tankers have been wandering the waters of the Indian Ocean for several days, waiting for new contracts. More than a dozen tankers loaded with Russian Urals oil are sailing toward Asia or idling along the route, a sign of producers racing to get cargoes closer to China as India pulls back from the trade. These vessels, carrying a combined 10 to 12 million barrels of oil, are spread across the Indian Ocean and off the coasts of Malaysia, China and Russia. 5 of them are indicating for orders or China for orders as their status, according to data intelligence firm KPLER, a category that usually means they don't yet have a specific buyer or discharge port. Tallinn, one of the strategic points on Moscow's trade routes, openly talks about the need to take further steps to limit Russian exports. The Estonian foreign minister points out that most Russian oil and gas still flow through the Baltic Sea, which provides scope for increasing pressure through sanctions and monitoring tankers.
I can't see nothing right now.
The full ban of the maritime services, I do hope for these tankers will be there because 60% of Russian oil and gas export is going through the Baltic Sea. So you can imagine between Estonia and Finland there is 80 kilometers.
At the same time as the talks in Washington, India emphasizes that decisions on raw material purchases are the responsibility of domestic companies and are intended to serve their own energy security. However, there is no doubt about the course Indian companies will take in today's geopolitical environment. Importantly, it has been officially confirmed for the first time that the Americans are entering the raw materials market.
Buying of crude oil or LNG, LPG from the US is in India's own strategic interests as we diversify our oil sources. But the decisions are taken by the buyers, by the companies themselves. So the trade deal doesn't discuss who will buy what and from where.
Given that China is the second largest buyer of Russian raw materials, it is almost certain that India, with a good offer from the United States or Venezuela, will choose a different path from its regional rival. This will also deprive Beijing of leverage in talks with Delhi, since its of close relations with Moscow will no longer be relevant. The USA will further expand its influence in Asia.
Japan's right wing pulled off an unprecedented electoral victory. The ruling Liberal Democratic Party, together with its coalition partner Ishin, achieved its best result ever. Both parties secured 2/3 of the seats in the Japanese parliament, which means that Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi can enjoy the strongest public mandate since World War II. Japan's first woman prime minister, who claims to be inspired by Britain's Iron Lady Margaret Thatcher, secured 316 of the 465 seats in the lower house of the parliament for her Liberal Democratic Party, its best result ever. Takaichi thanked voters for their trust, which she understands as a call to change state policy no matter what. As someone who deeply believes in the fundamental strength of Japan and the Japanese people, I will take on new challenges together with all our citizens. The future is not something that is simply given to us. It is something we build through our constant efforts and challenges. Takaichi promises to revise national security policy and increase defense spending in the face of threats from China and North Korea. Beijing speaks of a resurgence of Japanese militarism. A nation must defend itself with its own two hands. No one will come to the aid of a country that lacks such determination. We will steadfastly protect the peace and independence of our country, its territory, territorial waters, and airspace, and the lives and safety of all our citizens. The Japanese Prime Minister also announced the opening of a new chapter in the history of the Japan-US alliance. During the upcoming meeting with President Trump, we will reaffirm the unwavering unity between Japan and the United States and continue to develop cooperation in a wide range of areas: diplomacy, economy, and security. On Sunday, U.S. President Donald Trump congratulated Prime Minister Takaichi on her victory, wishing her great success in enacting the Peace Through Strength agenda. Congratulations to Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi and her coalition on a landslide victory in today's very important vote. She is a highly respected and very popular leader. Sanae's bold and wise decision to call for an election paid off big time. Her party now runs the legislature, holding a historic 2/3 supermajority, the first time since World War II. Takaichi's excellent relationship with Trump is seen as a crucial aspect of the country's security and has undoubtedly won her many supporters.
If you are seen as Trump's buddy, if you're Trump's good friend, somebody who Trump even goes out of his way to endorse during an election, that is seen as a plus. It's a plus for Japan because that means Trump is on Japan's side. And the last thing that Japanese people want is to become a country that is targeted by Trump.
During her election campaign, she pushed a positive message that she would strengthen Japan economically and defensively. She also announced zero value-added tax on food for 2 years. I hope that in the future, the government will tighten discipline, not become complacent, and exercise power without any scandals. I think it's a good thing. People who love Japan, true patriots, have been elected. Voters were captivated by Takaichi's image as a sincere and hardworking person, but her strong views and emphasis on security strained relations with China, while her promises of tax cuts shook the financial markets. Today, however, the Tokyo Stock Exchange reached record levels, a sign that Prime Minister Takaichi's coalition's crushing election victory was a positive surprise for investors. Takaichi's party performed much better than expected in the election. I think the stability of the administration's foundations and the expectation that its policies will be easier to implement led to additional purchases and a bear market on the stock exchange. Japan's current fiscal situation is clearly improving, and rating agencies are even giving it positive ratings. The 64-year-old Takaichi put all her eggs in one basket and announced an unusual early election in the winter to take advantage of her high approval ratings. She promised to step down if she lost. She went for broke and won.